Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries, where we are once again talking about the Euros. It is so close now, and we're hoping that all these videos are helping you with your choices with your teams, because there are quite a few interesting differential options to talk through, quite a few players or teams that I think have been overrated or underrated. But in terms of it as well, we know that you are fantasy addicts as well as us, and we want you to be involved with it. So we have a competition for you to get involved with. It's really easy, the 1, 2, 3 method. All you have to do is like, share the video, comment below, but also subscribe to the channel. Number 2 is to follow our link and sign up to FanTeam. And then number 3 is to send us your team IDs so that we can credit your account. We really want you to get involved with us. There is a lot of money to win. £1 million prize pool, £200,000 for the person that wins the tournament. It is sensational stuff and really exciting. But today, we're moving on to Group D. I think this one is probably the one that means the most to a lot of our viewers. We're going to be talking about the 3 lions of England. Before we get into actually the team, the data, the analysis, Ben, how do you think that the 3 lions are going to do?
You put me on the spot here, Jason. Look, some may or you may not have seen the Who Scored podcast that I'd done at the end of last week, and we were asked as part of that podcast, winners, dark horse, highest point scorer, golden ball, and biggest flop. I actually had England as my biggest flop, but that's not to say that I don't think they will have any, they'll not be successful this tournament. I just think there's a general feeling that England should win this Euros, looking at their squad, looking at some of those individuals, but I think we may just fall a little bit short, and I'm seeing a semi-final exit. That's what I'm personally thinking. And for me, like I say, that weight of expectation, people will be disappointed with that, and they'll probably see that as a little bit of a failure, given that, we reached the semi-finals of the World Cup, what was 3 years ago now. The squad has grown, we've matured. We've got people like Mason Mount who've really come to the fore this season. This could be Jack Grealish's time, to really announce himself on the world's biggest stage. So, there are a lot of positives coming into this tournament. Yes, there's question marks over the fitness of some key players in there. But overall, look, I do see a good tournament. I see a really good group stage. I mean, that'll be a true barometer of where we're at. England really need to be dominating this group for me. They should lay down a marker in those first 2 games, and really sort of set the stall out to say, to show the rest of the teams in this European tournament that England, for once, we mean business, and you've got to take us seriously. So it's probably not what people wanted to hear, but I'm trying not to let the head rule the heart. The heart ruled the head. I did have a few drinks last night, and yeah, look, I think we should do well. There are a number of assets within that England squad that have piqued my interest for this group stage, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to them playing. I haven't been blown away by their 2 performances in their friendlies. They've managed to eke out narrow 1-0 victories, and arguably, on other days, with a couple of great saves. I think one was Johnson, and the other night against Austria was Pickford. Opposition may have nicked a goal, and it would have put a slightly different slant on those games heading into the tournament. But 2 wins, 2 clean sheets, can't really ask for any more than that.
Yeah, the interesting thing as well is you're talking there about the team getting to the semi-final, and I think that it could be even more difficult. It could be scuppered by who they get in the round of 16, because if they do come top of the group, they get the person that comes second in that group of death. So that could be Germany, it could be France, it could be Portugal. And we were talking about the Winker himself the other day, CR7. Well, that could be his opportunity to get England once again. And I think it is a difficult draw for the Three Lions. But then there is always the saying that if you want to win these tournaments, you've got to play the hard teams at some point. And so I'm tempering hopes because I can see that the team could have a really difficult round of 16 or even quarter-final against the likes of maybe France, Germany, Portugal, and the dream could be over before it even begins, really. And it's sad to say, but that's just the reality of the situation. Just before we get into the analysis as well, I do have to say congratulations to our winner of the competition, Frank, aka @EnglishRabbit on Twitter. I hope that he enjoys his prize and that he'll be competing with us in FanTeam going forward. I wish him the best of luck, but maybe not as much luck as for us in this. But yes, England go into this tournament with a FIFA ranking of 4th in the world. It's quite commendable. They had a qualifying position of 1st, expected position of 1st there, and they had 7 wins and 1 loss in qualification. That 1 loss did come to the Czech Republic, so it'll be quite interesting to see, because obviously they are in the group with England as well, so they could offer a bit of a problem. And then there's the age-old enemies of Scotland, and of course they're Croatia, who again scuppered England's chances of a World Cup final. But they scored 37 goals. They had an XG of 29.1 or 1.84 XG per 90. They conceded 6 goals. Quite a sturdy defence. 7.7 XGA or 0.88 XGA per 90. Still commendable stuff. Now, what I will say is some of these tactics and points have been discussed with the video with Tristan, which I think a lot of people should check out, because there was the controversial discussion that we fully opened out about how England should or shouldn't maybe win their group, a bit like in the World Cup 2018. But going into the tournament, the side have 4 wins in the last 6 competitive matches, but also 2 losses, which may have knocked confidence. And these are teams that England would have probably wanted to beat. But the side did try a new 4 at the back system to improve things, which is very different from the formation and the style that was at World Cup 2018. Now, talking of that previous performance as well, I would say that there was problems with the attack, but maybe it's because it was a poor England squad in that tournament. But most of the goals were from set pieces. 9 of the 12 goals in that tournament were coming from dead ball situations, and I don't think that's good enough. There was hardly any goals from open play. So, as stated, Southgate has almost experimented with 4-3-3 or variations of the 5 at the back to try and get England scoring a little bit more. I think it was successful in qualification, but as always, the qualifying groups do have minnows. They do have teams that realistically England should absolutely smash on their day. And so there has been a switch in play of England, and this is where I would congratulate Southgate. Is it's more possession based, it's more going up the pitch. So yeah, just on looking at their players, Kane is the obvious pick, ridiculously good player. I don't think I really need to go into all his data and XG and whatnot, because he's been so good. But what I would say is, interestingly, Jack Grealish, and I know this might annoy you here, but Raheem Sterling are the England players with the most touches in the opposition box per 90. And Jordan Henderson is the most progressive passer of the ball in the team, with most passes into the final third. But he has that injury, and I think that will be a bit of a loss. At the back, I think Maguire and John Stones are pretty much set in stone. They're probably the ones that, if you do want to buy into the England defence, you should get in. And also, you know, I talked there of maybe being a problem with open play goals, but John Stones and Maguire are big aerial threats. And with somebody like Kieran Trippier delivering the balls from those set-piece situations, especially against a team like Croatia that have actually failed to deal with aerial duels, they're not very good at defending set pieces. They've conceded quite a few. I think it could be a good own for them. And then, I said that there was a couple of losses recently, but England do have 11 clean sheets in their last 17 matches. So they are fairly strong at the back. As I said, there are only 5 goals conceded in the... 6 goals conceded in the qualification as well. So what I would say is there's quite a lot of questions about other players in the squad that I wouldn't go for. I think Kane... Those 2 centre-backs are probably the best picks in my opinion, but I don't know if you have any differing opinions, Ben.
The only concern that I would have with Harry Maguire is I suspect that first opening game is going to come too soon. We know he's carrying like a ligament problem and picked up playing for Manchester United, so that's a little bit of a carryover. And there's even question marks, whether that he could return in that second game. So that's something to bear in mind. I'm with you on Harry Kane. He is priced accordingly. He's the highest, priced striker in FanTeam at 13.5 million. 13.5 million, which is a big, big chunk of change. Yes, I do like him. Yes, I think England will score goals in that group, but I look at Belgium and I look at their group and I look at Lukaku and he's £2 million less. That would be the only concern or my only, the only caveat if I was looking to maybe invest elsewhere. But there's the weight of expectation on Harry Kane, and more often than not he does deliver, so that's great. Elsewhere in that team, I think for me, I love Jack Grealish. I think he could really light this tournament up. There's still maybe 1 or 2 slight concerns with regards to his fitness and his ability to maybe string games in succession. And even if it's possible that he isn't having any injury, is Gareth Southgate going to manage Jack? If England get 2-3 goals up, is Jack going to be the one that comes off if indeed he does start? Phil Forden, another great player, but it's almost that the Manchester City scenario. We know what Phil's about. We know what he can do. He's an outstanding talent, but does he get into that starting 11? We just don't know. That's the slight worry. I'd love to see him in there as well. I'd say this could be the making, and really, if you've been living under a rock for the past few seasons and you haven't heard about Phil Forden, this is could be his opportunity to really stand out and show you what he's all about. But look, there's a lot of competition in that England squad. For me, the 2 opening games are key. I think when you're looking at targeting assets from any team, if particularly strikers, if you're going to get some decent score lines, if you're going to get some points on the board, inherently it's going to be in these group stages against maybe the so-called weaker opposition. We know what's going to happen potentially further down the line if the form book plays out. And that would be a worry, maybe holding on to the likes of a Harry Kane at that price going in. So if you're going to do it early and hope that England, bang in the first couple. The third game is always a worry as well, because if you're coming off back-to-back wins, again, our manager's looking to maybe rest players, minimise minutes, or is there a technical or tactical element to come into play there when you're starting to look at other groups and possibilities around who you may play in that knockout phase. So we shall see. But like I say, I think Harry Kane is one that's definitely on my initial draft, along with Jack Grealish.
I just have reluctancy of bringing Harry Kane in my first draft because the Croatia game doesn't look as good to me in my eyes as you mentioned there. Belgium versus Russia, or for example Netherlands versus Ukraine, maybe Portugal versus Hungary. Those are captainable games for me. Whereas as much as I think Kane is one of the best strikers in Europe, I think Croatia will make it a difficult game. Whereas I'll be happy to own him against Scotland and probably the Czech Republic. But then there is that question and maybe you can answer it a little bit more, is do you think that there'll be a lot of rotation in match day 3, and so maybe Kane's minutes will be managed and he won't play the full 90?
What I would say, and what we do know about the English Premier League, we're coming off the back of an unprecedented shortened pre-season campaign. We are the fastest league in the world, the most energetic. Players within the Premier League complete more high-intensity runs than any other league in the world. So question marks around fatigue, both physically and psychologically, just the mental demands of the game. That's real. That's real, and that's reflected in the injuries that we see towards the end of the season, soft tissue and muscular tears. So rotation is a real distinct possibility, because Gareth Southgate will have all the data to hand. They will be measuring the players daily to see what their thresholds and their tolerance levels are at. So if there's an opportunity to rest up these players with one eye on those subsequent fixtures, then it would be a little bit naive for him not to take those opportunities to do so going forward, because like I say, that accumulation of fatigue could come back to bite them and ultimately, why would you want to risk a player unnecessarily as well, and what could amount to maybe a dead rubber? So look, it depends on those first 2 fixtures, but yeah, look, I would be looking at all teams, once if they've had maybe back-to-back wins, the possibility of changes becomes a big, a real threat.
Yeah, one last player that I wanted to talk to you about was actually Kieran Trippier. I think he's quite an interesting prospect, one that I don't think is at all nailed. We really don't know, the fact that there was 4 right backs for the nation, but then Southgate did explain that Trippier can play on the right, he can play on the left, but he was so good at those set-piece situations. I think that England can keep probably 2 clean sheets in these opening games. Maybe they could against Croatia as well. I just think that Croatia are the most difficult ones in the group, and they really have to watch out for them. But if he could match up clean sheets and get an assist or 2 from dead ball situations, he'd be an absolute steal at his price points as well in FanTeam and Fantasy Euro.
Yeah, the original 4 right backs in the squad, to me, suggested that there were concerns over Harry Maguire, and the fact that you've got the likes of maybe Kyle Walker and Trippier who can play in several positions across that back line. Obviously, we know Trent is now being ruled out of the tournament, and we wait to see who Gareth Southgate's going to bring in. But it looks with possibly there's a lot of suggestion now that could be James Ward-Prowse. Off the back of his performance against Romania. So we'll wait and see with that one. But yeah, it's difficult. And we talk about this in the Weekly Monster and, in FanTeam generally. When we're looking at big games and big players, we want starters in there. And yeah, unless we're going to get some real insight from Gareth, to say that, well, Trippier will start, then I don't know. Like I say, there's concerns there. We do have the fallback option, as always, with FanTeam, that if he doesn't start, then you've got a backup. But we'll have to see how this one pans out. Like I say, we've still got a few days to decide. But look, I like your thinking. He's on the radar, but whether he's done enough for a starting shirt, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I'm not convinced either. There is the argument that obviously he's one of Southgate's favourites and he depended on him in the last World Cup. But then there's the flip side, as you said there's no certainties with that squad. And just to remind people, in terms of Fantasy Euro, I think he's a really interesting price of 5 mil. In FanTeam, he's 6.5, so that it does make that differential risky nature of that a little bit higher there. So I think the Fantasy Euro kind of pricing makes him quite a good prospect in many instances, because you've got that ability to manage the bench as well. Let's move it on to Croatia though. FIFA ranking of 14th, qualified first, expected position of first as well. They had 5 wins, 2 draws, 1 losses, 17 goals, and they underperformed their XG as they should have had 18.5 goals or 1.98 XG per 90. But they were quite solid at the back with 7 goals conceded, 5.8 XGA or 0.88 XGA per 90. Coming into this, they didn't really have a standout striker, so Bruno Pektovic was the big one there with 4 goals scored. But I think this is a problem with the team, that they're in quite a transitional phase. I think this is where Croatia, we talk about the Belgium golden generation, whereas Croatia's golden generation has almost passed. Modric is getting so old now. Rakitic is out of the squad, and a few others that have just come to the end of their careers. So what I would say is Croatia did well, qualifying from quite a difficult group, qualifying ahead of the likes of Hungary, Slovakia and Wales, and all those teams actually did qualify through the group or through other means as well. So it shows you the quality of opposition that they did have to play. But then the results since qualification are of concern, because they narrowly missed out on bottom place and relegation from their Nations League. They survived by 1 goal difference, and the side will be almost embarrassed with themselves for letting in 16 goals in that UEFA Nations League. And in their last 6 competitive matches, they have 4 losses, only 2 wins, 8 goals scored and 8 goals conceded. And 2 of their wins were against Cyprus and Malta. So it's not great stuff there. And as I said, Subasic, Rakitic, Mandzukic are all now out of the squad. They're retired. And Modric will have his last hurrah. But 3 clean sheets in the team's last 12 matches makes me say that the defensive assets are a total void. I mean, if you were to go for a Croatian defensive asset, then the Rangers attacking wing-back Borna Barisic is probably the only one. Now in FanTeam, he's priced at 4.5. In Eurofantasy, he is priced the same. So the pricing does give me a little bit of interest, but then I kind of go back, and what I will always say is my bread and butter with defensive assets is, are they going to get clean sheets? Because attacking outputs are great, but I think a lot of teams can't get an attacking output till they've got a strong defence. And so kind of looking at his limited data set, because there's only 10 appearances in the Europa League to kind of compare with other top teams in Europe. He has 3 goals and 3 assists in those games. His data is probably a little bit inflated from these appearances, but his XG of 0.23 per 90 and an XA again of 0.23 per 90 are in the upper 90 percentile. So he is a really good attacking prospect. But just for me, Ben, I don't know if you agree with this, the fact that I don't think Croatia will keep clean sheets in many of the games, if any of them, means it's probably a total avoid for defensive assets for the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably the only one that I had highlighted as well. Off the back of a decent season with Rangers, I think 1 goal, 6 assists from his 33 appearances in the Scottish Premier League. If 4.5, I'm inclined to maybe think, well, I might happily stick him on the bench, to be honest. He just enables you to spend money elsewhere. He's, the likelihood is he's going to start. He's coming off the back of a groin problem, which caused him to miss Rangers' last 2 games of the season. But he has played in Croatia's friend. He's come through those unscathed. So there are, at this stage, there are no concerns with regards to re-injury recurrence, and he's back to building up his fitness and that little bit of sharpness. And yeah, look, I think at 4.5, he's someone to make a mental note of. And like you say, if you need him on the bench, it's difficult. I don't really know a lot about Croatia, if the truth be known, coming into this tournament. I'm not really sure how they're going to perform. They could actually, they could do all right, or they could absolutely bomb. I don't know. I'll have to wait until that. I'd rather have eyes on and see them in the tournament. I'm not interested in these non-competitive games. They can be very misleading. They can, tell a story. It leads you up the garden path. But when it comes down to, that competitive nature of the tournament, there are no substitutes. So in terms of any asset for Croatia, like I say, I maybe just keep my powder dry, get some eyes on in the tournament, and then make a decision based on how I think they're performing.
Yeah, it's a difficult one with them. As I said, there's been mixed form, but some of them have been competitive games, some of them have been friendlies, and that is a bit misleading. Moving up further up the pitch, I think Andre Kramerich has been getting a bit too much attention. Looking at his goal-scoring record for his country, 14 goals in 52 games. Just not for me, and the fact that he's not scored in his last 9 games for Croatia just means to me that he's not a really in-form striker. The one that could be of interest to people is Ivan Perisic. He is on free kicks, 4 goal involvements in qualification. In his last 12 appearances in competitive matches for his country, he's had 6 goal involvements. So he comes into the tournament having a good season with Inter Milan. Individual data, not great. His XG per 90 is only just above average, although he fares better in terms of XA per 90 in the top 25%. His strong suit seems to be crosses into the penalty area, which is also actually the type of play that Croatia like to have. So that could fit in well. The fact that his strong suit kind of is the strong suit of the team. But again, price tag, it really puts me off even considering him. 8.0 price tag in FanTeam, and the fact that he is a forward in the game mode really puts me off. 8.5 in Euro Fantasy, so he's even more expensive. He is a midfielder in that, but yeah, still there is that loss of goal scoring points because he's a striker in FanTeam. And the price point in Euro Fantasy, I know it's only 0.5 more, but in both cases, it really doesn't attract me to him. So realistically, there's only that defender that I would even consider at all, but I'm not too kind of sharp on any of them. And yes, people are going to say, oh, you've left out Modric, but he's not really involved with goals. So he only has 3 goals and assists in his last 23 appearances for Croatia. That's not his style. He's kind of the assister of the assister. He's good in the build-up play, but he's not really going to be getting those points. And yeah, I don't know if you've got any other assets from Croatia that maybe I've missed out that we should have attention of. But for me, there's not a lot to like in this team.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Jason. I mean, what I would add around Kramerich, he's coming off the back of his best goal-scoring domestic season. So that's probably why the fantasy community has been, a little bit warm on the possibility of him playing. And in terms of who scored ratings, he's actually 3rd ranked in that Croatian team. Barisic at 7.35 is rated the best domestically. Vlasic is 7.32 is second, and Kramerich is 7.23 third. So, there is that. And then also, we're looking at a straight again, it's 5.5 million. So there's not a lot of money there. I've heard a lot of people talk about the possibility of maybe steaming into Lukaku and Harry Kane. Kramerich, would enable that at 5.5. There's not a lot of money to be tied up in there. However, on the flip side, what I would say, and we've touched upon this before, you could have Yilmaz at 4.5 and save yourself another million. So yeah, that's just my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, and Yilmaz is on penalties as well, whereas I think Modric is for Croatia. So another point to go with the main man from Turkey, Yilmaz. Just tactically speaking in the team actually switched between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3 formation. The side tried to maintain possession and try and attack a lot, but these types of attack, as I said a little bit earlier, a lot of it is cross-based. So they have low quality, not a lot of high XG opportunities. They do a lot of battles in the opponent's areas, but this is more kind of physical battles rather than dribbling it in or passing it in terms of high quality opportunities. And defensively, the side are kind of middling. They're not too attacking, but they don't sit in a low block. They're comfortable battling for the balls in the air, as kind of indicated by the crosses and the attacks that they have as well. But they do have middle of the pitch battles as well on the pitch with defensive duels. So it's quite an interesting style that they do play, kind of a mid-block, and neither too pressing or too laid back as well. But let's move it on to the Czech Republic, who are ranked 40th in terms of FIFA rankings. They qualified second and had an expected position of second as well. 5 wins, and as stated, one of those wins was against England. No draws, but 3 losses. 13 goals scored and an XG of 14.4, so that kind of shows that they underperformed and maybe not the best strikers. 1.77 XG per 90. Goals scored, 11. Goals conceded was 11, and an XG conceded of 8.3 XGA, or 0.95 XGA per 90. Now, Patrick Schick was their top goal scorer, but I think a lot of attention could be on Thomas Souček, which I think is right. You know, he's been a standout player. And this is kind of a situation maybe for the Czech Republic where, as with other teams like Turkey, we would say, oh, it's come a year too late, this tournament. Whereas I think with the Czech Republic, this extra year has actually been a benefit to them, because Souček and the other player that he plays with at West Ham in Kufal, they both had really good seasons and established themselves as really high performers. And so I think that this could be a good time for them. So they had, as I've explained, their Euro qualification, but in their most recent 6 matches, they have 3 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. They've scored 10 and conceded 5. So it's kind of in-betweeny for them in terms of their recent form. They had a fairly good Nations League where they won their group, they got promoted, they won 4 of their 6 encounters. But a concern will be the fact that they had 2 losses against fellow Group D inhabitant Scotland in that Euro UEFA League. So there's a lot to consider with this Czech Republic team, and maybe I sound a little bit more excited on them than I do with the Czech Republic, but it's because we know how good Kufal is. I think that he's an interesting asset for these Euros. We know that he'll be bombing on. His 5 million pricing in FanTeam and Fantasy Euros does make him a bit of a tough pick. You know, there's quite a few 5 million assets that are as good as, if not better, but he's not too expensive as well. Maybe a 4.5 would have made him so much more better. The thing is, to me, Ben, do you think that the Czech Republic are going to get many clean sheets?
Again, I put the Czech Republic in the same sort of grouping as Croatia. I want to see how they perform on the big stage. So the jury's out with regards to maybe plumbing for most of their players. However, in Souček, I mean, for me, he is one of the standout players at 5 million in the game. So he will 100% be in my squad. You know, he's cemented himself into fantasy folklore with these performances for West Ham this season. But what we see, the heat maps will show us that, you know, Souček actually plays a little bit deeper for the Hammers, particularly since the arrival of Jess Lingard. Whereas for the Czech Republic, you know, he's one of their main attacking threats, particularly on set pieces. I think if you have, like I say, if you have a look at his heat map, there is a big mass of red and orange dot in that opponent's penalty area. You know, so he loves to get forward, and he scored a hat-trick as recently as, I think it was March, away in Estonia in a World Cup qualifying game. And he scored, I think, 4 in 2 games. So he's got that threat, he's got that confidence. And I think at 5 million, you'd be hard pushed to identify many better bargains in the FanTeam game for these, you know, opening fixtures.
Yeah, looking at it, so for FanTeam he's 5 million. In Fantasy Euro, he's still, I would say, a fairly enticing 6.5. The other reason why he is so enticing to me is the fact that the style of the Czech Republic is really to his strengths. The team loves to play the long ball, very direct. They like to transition quick, but then get lots of crosses in. And to be fair, the style does work for them too. They generate a good amount of XG per match. The little amount of shots that they do produce are of higher quality than maybe, like I'm saying, with Croatia, who do also seem to have a lot of crossing, but not so much. And Souček himself, he has 5 goals in his last 14 games for the Czech team. Not amazing form, but going into this tournament, he is in pretty damn good form that he has been with West Ham. They do carry some intensity into the way that they defend, so we will see the likes of Kufal getting up there. They'll cause opponents problems, win the ball back in the final third of the opposing team, so they're quite pressing in that style as well. And no surprises, they're quite good aerial duelists as well. They don't allow their opponents many opportunities to shoot. Indeed, only Spain and England allowed less than their 6.8 average shots per game. But again, the problem is the fact that some of these shots that they do allow in are of high quality XG, and that is why they're conceding 0.95 XGA per game, almost a shot a game. So it's kind of indicative that those little ones that they do allow through the 6 kind of translate into at least 1 XG. So yeah, I think Souček, I agree with you, Ben. I'm not sure if I'll have him in my squad because I like a few other assets, but he is on the wish list, and we will get onto our squads very, very soon, people. The final team in Group D is Scotland, FIFA ranking 44th, qualification position 3rd, and expected position 3rd there. 5 wins, no draws, and 5 losses. Goals scored 16, and a 14.4 XG and a 1.58 XG per 90. But they conceded a hell of a lot of goals too. 19 goals conceded, 8.3 XGA, or that was 1.38 XGA per 90. Interesting though, top goal scorer was John McGinn with 7. So in terms of Scotland, they qualified for the tournament via the Nations League group playoffs. So they didn't actually qualify through the Euro qualification groups. That's where they came 3rd, and it wasn't good enough. But they did come 3rd in a fairly difficult group behind Belgium and Russia. But what I would say is they were absolutely demolished by Belgium and Russia. Against these two, they conceded 12 goals and only scored once. So it shows that they're not really a team that can kind of go toe-to-toe with the big boys. Their most recent record is mixed. 1 win in their last 6 competitive matches, 3 draws, 2 losses. They're still conceding, maybe a little bit less because they only let in 6 in those 6 matches, but they've continued with this struggle to score goals. I'm not too sure that there's many appeals there. Looking through their squad, defensively, in their last 12 matches, only 4 clean sheets. So I'm not looking there. And it's funny because in terms of FPL, you'd say Robertson, almost a dead cert own. He's one of the most appealing. But because of how poor Scotland are, I know that Robertson can bomb on and create things. But who's he bombing on and creating things for? Che Adams, I think, is a great addition to the Scottish squad. 5 million in FanTeam, 6.5 in Euro Fantasy. But really, is he going to score that many goals? Is he going to be that amazing? John McGinn is a bit more enticing. The fact that he's 4.5 is pretty good for FanTeam and top goal scorer in the qualifiers. But 7.5 pricing in Fantasy Euros is ridiculously over the top. He shouldn't be considered by anybody at that price point. So yeah, I don't know if you have any positivity about Scotland, Ben, or have I kind of covered it there that they're not really good at any end of the pitch?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I suppose the concern, or not the concern or the worry, maybe looking at the wider circle, because we expect Scotland to be the whipping boys of the group. But they will look at that result against the Netherlands, the 2-2 draw, and people might be thinking, oh, actually, have Scotland got a bit of a chance? Are we writing them off a little bit too soon? Have they got a little bit more about them? But for me, it's still in no. And it's a point I've raised before. Let's not get too swayed by these games. You do your research, do your due diligence. And like you said, I mean, they weren't good enough to qualify through their normal, European qualification route. If anybody, and it's a big if, and it's purely based on the price point, and yeah, he's a different beast from how he is at Aston Villa. He's almost, there's not that. Scotland haven't got a Jack Grealish, they haven't got an El Ghazi, they haven't got maybe a Ross Barkley or an Ollie Watkins. So, John McGinn has stepped up for his national team and he's done quite well. And at 4.5 million, if you're looking to maybe fill your bench, then, there is definitely worse players you could plump for over him, but he would be the only one really, yeah, don't get suckered into to Robertson. This is not Liverpool. Well, this is Scotland here, and England could do a big job on them at Wembley. So, no, for the majority of those players, it is most definitely an avoid.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be another tears for the Titans, for the Tartans this year. It's not going to be a good one at all. So we have covered all of Group D here. And as I wrap up here, just to remind you, do get involved with the competition. It's so easy. Share, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We want you to get involved with the comments as well. Do message us. We're talking about Group D here. Do you think that England have got what it takes to go further? I said probably the quarterfinals. Ben said the semi-finals. But is football coming home? Answer us below. But in terms of it, get involved with that competition. Make sure to stay tuned. And we will be having the injury update table, won't we, Ben, in the next few days? I think I'll pass it over to you to sign us out, but also to explain about that exciting addition for everybody for this Euros.
Yeah, so by the time this video actually goes live, which may be some point on Monday, our injury Euro table should already be firing on all cylinders. We're busy populating that at this moment in time. So as we speak, it's all getting done. So that should go live maybe around at some point on Monday, which is great. We're also looking to link all of our preview videos to that page, and also some brilliant stats and a data pack which underpins all of these videos from your good self, Mr. McKenna, and I'm sure everybody will absolutely love that, because you've put a hell of a lot of work and research into bringing these shows together, and that just it's testament to how meticulous and thorough you are in the job that you do. Fantastic. But yeah, look, really enjoyed it. It's an interesting Group D. We all hope, hopefully not blind patriotism, that England are going to go through and smash it. Look, we'll find out soon enough. But anyway, for now, that's Group D, and it's done. Until the next time.